Hey everyone, we are on the job site of the construction of the new Clear Lake Township Hall, and we are being hosted today by BCI, Bozer Construction Inc. And Dan Karowski is the project manager. We're going to introduce him in just a second. So we're going to head into the job shack first and start with talking about the plan and the overall responsibilities of general contracting and where they're at in the build process. And we're live, there we go. So as I said, we are being hosted by BCI, and this is Dan Karowski of Bozer. Is it BCI or Bozer Construction?
Formerly Bozer Construction. We've changed our name to BCI about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And basically, like Joe said, it's mostly overseeing the entire project. So everything from pre-construction to the final punch list and turning over that project to the customer. So the process kind of starts with architects and engineers. So you start at your site work and laying out the land, and the architect kind of designs the building, meeting with the customer and designing a building that fits their needs. And then they kind of turn it over to us. We get a price for it, quantify everything, and then we try to get trade contractors lined up for all of the steps.
So the rendering is maybe a good transition here, and we got this sweet swivel we're using. Check that out. And this is starting with the end in mind. So if they're going to sell this to Clear Lake Township, they have to provide a rendering, and HMA did this, right?
Correct. Yep.
So HMA is working for BCI, and they did a rendering. They modeled this up in an architectural program and said, here's what it's going to look like. We're going to do stamped concrete, and this will be pavement, and we're going to use natural or arches with structural wood material, stone. And most people that don't have a creative vision can go, okay, yeah, that's exactly what we're thinking. And then you said you have to basically go back and estimate all this. How much is it going to cost to roof it? Who's going to sign it? How much? Who's going to do all the stone work? And then on the floor here, actually, this is the other part of this is, well, we got to pick out materials. So we got to pick siding out, carpet, stone front. That's what's going on it.
Yeah.
Okay. But once they have that plan, speaking of the plan, you need like a set of plans to go off of. And the job shack is usually where you can come to verify that, like the set of plans, specifically sizing, location. You would have your own set, and then every subcontractor would have their set as well, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So, the floor plan, this is kind of would be where most people would start with the general floor plan. Just kind of gives you a square footage, layout, how many walls, doors, windows, etc. So you'd start with that, and then it gets into some of the details. So the floor plan is probably what a lot of you guys have seen in class.
Yep.
This is a door schedule, so it tells you every single door and window. They label them, give you, for commercial construction, you have some more specifics regarding fire ratings, things of that nature. Then you get into the cross cuts and section views, get into your more specific design layouts and construction techniques. Also, an engineer will review all this and give you all of the information, really specific details regarding every single connection.
I think the important thing here is if you can recognize some of the same concepts, you can learn and adapt to reading more complex plans. Okay, so we just stepped outside here, and Dan, you want to talk a little bit about, when I talked to you last week to line this up, you had said that they just got done with concrete, with the footing and foundation, and they poured the slab already, but there was no walls up on this. So I'm actually going to turn around and talk a little bit about building schedule and progress that they've made to date.
So to date, we've got about 2 weeks worth of concrete work and excavation prior to today, and then we've got just started, this is day number 4 that the framers are actually on site here. We had trusses delivered just yesterday, so they put up these trusses between the course of yesterday and then going on today. Leading forward, they'll get into sheeting all the roof trusses up and the actual roof on here. So
how many guys are, I shouldn't say guys, how many members are on the framing crew?
We have 7 people on site. There is one girl. She's actually younger. I think she's only 18 right now, and he's got some other workers, just guys that do this for a living. So.
Okay. And the subcontractor for this is Mike Rennie.
Yep.
Okay. So Mike Rennie, residential construction. That's the framer. 7-person crew, and in 4 days, they've managed to build all the walls, well, exterior walls for sure, looks like interior too, or close, and they are hanging the trusses right now. So take a look at our pettibone here. Awesome machine, amazing machine. And they're hooking these things. There's a tail person on a rope that just kind of guides it in. They're finishing out the annex framing right now. So they got all the big trusses hung, and they're just setting these ones in place. And they are cranking on this thing, right? Good time to make hay right now with the weather. I'll just watch this a little bit. So this pettibone, right, it's a Versalift. Lulls are what they're often called. That's a common brand, but that's a telescoping boom. And then they've also got that handler up top there with the hook. It can only hold so much weight for those light truss members. It's no problem.
One thing to keep in mind at this stage, especially, is safety. Everybody you'll see is wearing high vis, hard hats, you know, things of that nature. When you got machinery moving around, you want to make sure you're visible. Everybody's tied off up top. They all have a little rope and lanyard.
So we can see that tie off there. He's working on the flies. That's what I would call them anyway, or the overhangs.
Yeah.
So these are a 2-foot overhang, it looks like. So our eave on the gable end, and he's just nailing those off individually. And you can see that tether that he's got there, so that would help him. If he fell, it would slow him down anyway. Speed Square 101, recognize that. Marking for cut lengths, putting an X on the left side. Using all the board that he can, looks like.
This is Seth. He's the foreman. He's been doing this for a while. He kind of does all the layout and cutting. He's kind of the ground man, and he's just making sure he's reading plans and actually feeding the guys and gals the material already marked out.
So the importance of a cut man, we haven't talked about that specifically, but Seth, if he's feeding the materials, he knows that the right materials are going up.
Yeah,
probably why the lead is running as the ground man.
Yeah.
And then he's sending that up and saying, hey, you got to hang these out over the end. And you can look at pretty cool parallel lines, right? Those flies look really nice. They're all in line, even. Good work.
Okay, so we're inside the building. We just came in through the front door and took a left right away. We're going in through some double doors. As you can see up here, we've got a header. This is called, this is a double 2x8 and a 2x6 scabbed on top and bottom. This rests on a cripple stud, and then you got your main king stud. This would be very similar to what Mr. Schulte had showed you probably a few weeks ago, if I remember correctly, when you guys were building your little models.
Yep, so we would call this one, and I'll test you on that. He's calling it a cripple. What would this be called by the Perkins brothers? And that is the load supporting stud there. That's the one that's holding our header. What did they call it in the video? And we just have a single king, right, on the outside too, so that tells us something about the opening as far as how much weight it's holding. If you look at the top of that, there's nothing, well, there is those annexes that are setting on it, so it is load bearing.
Yep.
It's holding something. Yep. But maybe it's not as critical as our windows on our exterior wall.
Above our windows, very similar detail. But then below it, you just have these cripples, and then your sill plate too. And that gives you your rough opening for your window size. Plop your window in, and that's kind of how that finishes out. Otherwise, everything else here is 16 on center in construction. So I know you guys have talked about that. And then in commercial, we usually use a 5/8 inch sheeting on the exterior.
So that would be the thickness of this. These were sheeted out. That's 5/8 instead of usually 1/2 inch for residential.
Yeah.
And then they cut this opening after they sheet it, cut the opening, and we've seen the window fall out. So our layout, we can take a look at. Most of our layout is covered now, but we can see some marks for our anchor bolts, which tie the wall into the floor of the masonry. Mason's job or concrete job would be to put those bolts in, and then the framers have to tip the wall up, bolt those down, and that's what keeps the walls from blowing away. And maybe one other thing to point out is these anchors right here are what tie the rafter to the wall as well, so keep those two tied together. Okay, I had just asked Dan, why are we looking at a dirt section here? Why didn't they pour this floor in? And Dan, you were saying this is going to be a city council room, and so they're raising it. So they're going to use this the wall here as a form, and they're ramping this up.
Yeah, so it'll be an ADA ramp. In this situation, it'd be a 1 to 12 ramp. That'd be maximum for code for ADA compliance.
Okay, so ADA, American Disabilities Act, and we're talking about people in a wheelchair, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
and the slope of that, which we've also talked about, will be a 1 to 12.
Yep.
For every 1 that we go up, we can go over 12, no more than that.
Yep, and exterior would be a 1 to 20 slope, so it's a little bit less.
Okay, so then second question to ask you, not you, but I'm asking everybody that's watching this, why would exterior slope be less than an interior slope, especially in Minnesota? Okay, and you want to talk a little bit about the block detail in here. There's
So this is a block wall. This is actually a fireproof room, not proof, but very fire resistant, up to 3 hours. So a 3-hour rating. This wall is actually a 4-hour rated, so it can withstand the heat of fire before becoming structurally unstable for up to 4 hours.
So what's the room used for, though? Is it like records and stuff?
So this is strictly for record storage.
Yep.
So all they want to do is have a small area they have records. They've kept records since the Clear Lake Township has been into existence. So they have over 100-year-old records that they still have, and they're in a fire safe right now. But they're going to put their safes inside of here too to keep them extra safe. And also, this could be a possible panic room or something like that if it ever. Hopefully never had to use it for that nature, but it could
certainly
be.
A tornado shelter. Very incredibly structurally sound. Cool. Okay, we've got a few other things to point out. There are some utilities that have come in already, so thinking about the order of things, the electricians or maybe the general has brought all of the main power supplies in under the ground in conduit or in that plastic before they pour the concrete. And none of the other electrical's been done, but that has to be done beforehand, otherwise you're going to cut a slot in the concrete.
Yeah. Any underground has to be done. That is done by an electrician. And then we've also brought our plumbers in, so they've run all of the pipes, all the sewer and drain lines underneath the slab prior to backfilling and then forming and pouring concrete. So, and as a project manager, that's probably one of the most critical things is coordinating and figuring out exactly the layouts and getting subcontractors in here or trade contractors in here in the right order. For example, like even this block wall, we've got 2 cutouts for the ventilation system that we need to get a supply and a return. So we've got two little holes that, quite honestly, I almost forgot them, but I caught them in time. They were about halfway up the wall, and I remembered, oh yeah, we got to get ventilation into that room. So I caught it in time. It wasn't a big deal, but still, it's just something that there's a lot of little details that you got to think about as a general contractor or just as a builder, even building your own home. You want to think about things in the right order and right sequence.
So in just the time we had walking around the site, they are putting the gable end rafter, and I guess something else we haven't talked about is this rafter is a little bit special because it's got verticals that are 16 on center, and maybe those are 19 too. Hard to tell.
Those are 16 on center.
Okay, so it's got verticals in it that allow for exterior sheeting and whatever the finish is going to be to go on that, and that's different than all the other trusses behind it. So that end truss is special, right? And they're just getting that set and they're flushing it up to the end. Going to tack that one in place. We can see also that top cord is quite a bit thicker and more substantial. It does taper down and follow this valley, which is kind of cool. But that top member is a bigger and heavier chunk of wood, the one he has his hand on right now. And then they're going to tack it in place. He's going to put a brace at the top in order to get the spacing right. And they'll have that section done. And then that's it for rafters.
Yeah.
There's nothing left on the ground. So it's probably a good point to take lunch too, if you're really coordinated. And all right, we got the last one set. Let's have a sandwich. Okay, well, before I cut this one, I want to say thanks, Dan, for the time out here. Of course, if there's questions about career pathway, well, anything like that, I know Dan would be open and interested to answer. The other reason we're doing this, and we've talked about this, is these companies, Bozer or BCI, Mike Brenny Construction, they're looking for people that are willing to do this work. Yes, it's physical, but it's very rewarding. You can see what you've done at the end of every day. and there's a lot of opportunity for growth and career pathway in this.